Morning, everyone. To start us off, who has heard of Harry Potter? Yeah? Brilliant. You might not have done. So the reason I've got this on the screen to start us off, 12 publishers turned down Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling wrote her book, thought she was onto something, went round to all the publishers. 12 of them said no. Bloomsbury eventually said yes and only gave her an advance of £1,500. They weren't too sure either, but they thought they'd give it a go. So there's something in that for me, in that you might have a great idea, but what you go on to do with that great idea has some science that goes into it. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about for the next 20 minutes is around that area. It's not an exact science, it's not an exact art, it sits somewhere in the middle. I'm a huge advocate of innovation. Innovation is what gets me out of bed in the morning. So I've spent over a decade working in FMCG, launching new food and drink products, and really finding out what's the insight for the consumer, what's going to make them want to buy this product over any other. And I see time and time again in lots of different organisations, they're not doing it very well. So what I want to do today is throw some thought starters out there. I'm not going to give you rules. I'm not going to give you an exact, this is how you do it successfully, but some things to think about and some challenging thoughts at that. So the first challenging thought, to be really controversial, in the world of food and drink, when it comes to innovation, big business is broken. So that's quite a big statement, and I could have called this talk Why Most FMCG Innovation Fails. That felt a bit negative there. I didn't think I'd have many people in the room if I had that kind of statement. So putting a positive spin on that and saying, what can we do with that? I went to a talk recently where they were talking about angelic troublemakers, and that's something that really resonated with me. If I can kind of share this information with you and one or two of you leave the room feeling a bit more like an angelic troublemaker, that will be a win. So you may look at that previous statement and give it a funny look of, really? That's quite broad? If you don't like babies, I'm sure there's some dog lovers in the room who can recognise this look. And for those that don't like dogs, the sceptical cat. And to stick with the Harry Potter theme, sceptical look from Hermione. So to put some stats behind it. In big businesses, it takes a lot of effort to get a project through. So roughly 1 in 11 projects coming out of a big R&D team in a big business is the one that will get through. There are 10 other projects that won't even make it to market. If you're one of those 11, are you following the rules at launch? So have you got a well-branded product so people are going to know what it is? Have you got good distribution? And will you be promoting that product? If you do, these are the stats. 75% of those won't make it to year 1. 25% of them will. The figure next to that is hitting $100 million. So those are the ones that are judged as successful in market. Those are the ones that your big retailers are more likely to keep in store for another year. And then the stats beyond that get a bit worse again. So moving from year 1 to year 2, only 35% of those products that made it to year 1 will make it to year 2. Usually that's because companies take off their A&P, so any advertising and promotion money that goes behind it, they take that away, and they expect a product to stand on its own 2 feet. It only got there in year 1, though, because you were telling people about it. In year 2, they forget or they don't know anymore, and there are other new products coming through. So those are the ones that are getting purchased. So the ones that make it through to the bottom corner, having lots of anniversaries behind them, really rare. The ones that do get through, though, are the ones that are tapping into new consumer needs. They usually start small and they build momentum gradually. So there is something in big businesses wanting to get out of the gates really quickly, make lots of money straight away. They're not sustainable, whereas the ones that are starting small, building up really organically, those are the ones that are more sustainable in market. There's a stat that says for family shopping, typically a family would buy 150 items, and that would meet 85% of their needs. So if people are buying regularly those items and most of their needs are being met, you have to say, what are the needs that are left? How do we interrupt that shopping behaviour? Also, there's a piece around looking at what's next. So these big companies are doing their R&D and innovation and looking at what consumers are interested in today. They'll run huge consumer groups and they'll be asking if people are interested in that product, and people will say yes, but it meets a need today. What we need to be doing is looking at the needs of tomorrow. What are those unmet needs that are going to be coming up that we can tap into and really unlock some passion within our consumers? So why is it the case? A bit more detail. So the customer is changing. We have more affluent customers and in greater number. Now, if you watch the news and you listen to all the Brexit coverage, all the economic news, you would say, actually, people are feeling worse off. It's just a case that the gap is widening. So we have quite a few people who are watching their money a bit more, but we have a lot of people at the other end as well. There's becoming more of them and they're getting more and more cash. So those are the ones that can make a choice about what they buy. And if you can meet a need for them, the price ticket almost disappears in their mind. If they're not making a compromise and you're doing something that they're really interested in, they no longer really look at that price. They will just go and buy it. The other piece is the customer is changing in terms of the demographics. So we hear a lot of talk about millennials, but by 2025, 75% of the workplace will be millennials. They'll be the ones with the greatest spending power. And they work in a totally different way. It's a really big umbrella comment to talk about millennials, but if you kind of keep it in the next tranche of people that are coming through, what are we seeing? So you can see through these pictures, they're living in smaller spaces. They're at home for longer, so they're living with mum and dad and in a cramped space. When they do step out on their own, they're in a really small space. So we need to think about that when we're innovating in our products. They may choose to have some of those products out on display. It's kind of badging for them of what they're proud of. Are you looking at products in that area? Also, they're eating more on their own. So they may be living with their parents, but they'll choose to eat separately on their own. Are we creating products that will help with that? Snackification is a word that's become associated with millennials as well. So no longer will they have breakfast and lunch and evening meal. They'll kind of break that up. They'll have a light breakfast, they'll have a big morning snack, they'll have lunch, something in the afternoon, they'll graze at the end of the day, then they might eat again later, supper. So there's much more of a grazing activity. So again, are our products tapping into that? They're more health and ethics aware, so that piece around compromise. I heard some people talking recently at a show I was at. They had a millennial kind of up on stage going, "This is a millennial, tell us what you do," which was a bit cheesy, but actually the things that they were going into were really interesting. And they were saying they're really aware of what's in products now. They're really aware about what they're putting into their body and what it's doing for them. So we need to kind of tap into that and say, yes, we can make you products that are good for you, that meet a need that you've got, and you're not compromising. You'll get great taste, you'll get great flavour, you'll get something that's healthy as well. And they're craving stories. There's a lot around fear of missing out. They're sharing a lot on the internet. Instagram is massive for sharing food and drink stories and just having that social awareness with each other. So we need to be aware of that. But there's also a contradiction that goes along with that. So in that fear of missing out, and I really want to be in the moment and I'm enjoying this and this is amazing, they'll stop everything and they'll take a photo and they'll put it on Instagram, and then they'll carry on. So there's a contradictory behaviour there as well, that it's interesting to kind of dig into and say what is it that's important to them and why they're behaving in that way. I find the Facebook picture quite interesting as a reflection of reality. So that someone sitting, just eating. What they're putting on Facebook is completely different. They have a whole different idealised lifestyle. I think we're all a bit guilty of that, but something to be aware of. Retailers are changing. So I think nobody would deny this, and I'm guessing that this is not news to anyone in the room. The discounters coming through are playing into that value proposition. So price doesn't have to be as high as it was in the past, and they're really getting consumers in that way. And then there's a piece around simplification as well. The way that our big multiple retailers have responded to discounters is to simplify their ranges. And you may say, actually, that's needed. So I've got a picture of hummus up here. Hummus, launched in Waitrose in 1989. By 2015, we had 50 different types of hummus, at least, on the supermarket shelves in the UK. Now, I'm sure that many of you in the audience eat hummus. I'm not sure that many of you need 50 different types of hummus. So to kind of take that range back and go, okay, what's needed? What are we trying to solve here? So when someone brought out the 50th range product in the hummus range, what were they unlocking? Was there a need there? Or was it just iteration, new news to the market, and something that was doomed to fail and fall into those statistics? There's a piece around the way that people shop is changing. So word of mouth, social media, niche outlets. People are pushing back against the big organisations. I heard a stat that was something like 40% of people haven't shopped in a supermarket. If people aren't shopping in supermarkets, and a lot of businesses are kind of making their innovations work for specific supermarket relationships, where is that going to end? That is really a behaviour for today and not a behaviour for tomorrow. In terms of the word of mouth piece, the millennials that we spoke about, they are talking to each other about products. The bloggers and vloggers online are really influential, and the way it's been portrayed back to me is that people are finding out all the information before they get to a store. They're deciding before they get there that they want to make that purchase. So you need to make sure that anything that you're doing around your product isn't reliant on what they'll find when they get to store, because they've done a lot of that research and made their decision already. And then lastly on this sheet, competition is changing. So there are more challenger brands. So these people that are seeing a need, starting small, growing organically, there are more and more of them. They face a different speed, different technology challenges and lower costs. It's much easier for them to access the market than it used to be. And they're finding different ways to talk about their products with people. And that means that where people are making those decisions before they get to store, that they're up there with the branded players in terms of being accessible. So again, that question, will we be ready for tomorrow? If we're concentrating on our major multiples, we're just adding flavours to ranges, that kind of thing, how long can that last? So that's a tale of woe. And that kind of depressed me a little bit temporarily, because innovation is what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's not my paycheck. It's not saying, okay, I'm going to work, I'll get paid, there's something else keeping me going. Innovation is what really gets me going. So for me to think, okay, I go to work, I work really hard. Do I stand a chance of getting my project out of the building? Maybe. Do I stand a chance of having that lasting market? Maybe. There are some things we can do about it. So that's what I'm going to talk about next. You have a choice. It's almost the story of the tortoise and the hare. So the big business is the hare, and the small businesses are the tortoise. There's a lot that they can learn from each other. So, tortoise tips. So if you imagine a world where you have the infrastructure of the hare, but you take some of those learnings from the tortoise, that could be amazing. So the first piece is really understand your consumer. And we heard that in the previous presentation as well. And it's not just today's consumer, that's the thing. So it's thinking about tomorrow's consumer. And there's something around speaking to super users there as well. So people who are really bought into a category, really heavy users, those are the people that can fast track you to finding unmet needs, finding solutions against those. So you don't necessarily need to speak to lots and lots of people who are light users if you focus on some super users. There's something around designing experiences for people. So really speaking to them about what the experience needs to be and challenging behaviours. Something around removing compromise, so understanding what those compromise points could be and what's wrong with the current competitive set, why are people not buying those products. And something around understanding what stories would be motivating to people. Solving problems. It's really important. If you're going to put a product out there that isn't solving a problem, it might make sense. It might use a technology that you've got that you can really access easily. It might be an extension to an existing range. If you're not solving a problem, it's not going to last in market. So then you'd kind of challenge the resource that goes into that in terms of developing it, the money that goes behind launching it. Are you hitting the needs that you have, or are you just doing something because you feel like being busy and having activity is the way forward? Be hungry for it. So when you see the results, it becomes an addiction. So really have a passion for doing that. If you kind of approach your innovation in a kind of, I'm doing this, I've been asked to do it by my boss, you're not necessarily going to get the best results. Have a passion for what you're doing. Accept failure. So failure isn't necessarily failure, and as you see here, it's a first attempt in learning. You have to have an iterative approach, and to that point, minimum viable product is something that's being talked about more and more, and you'll see a lot more kind of startups and entrepreneurs working in this way. They will find the smallest route into market that they can to test a theory, to see what's working, what's relevant. They'll test and learn, they'll learn fast and share fast, and they'll take it into their business and say, okay, the next iteration needs to have this included as well. Whereas you'll see big businesses kind of keep everything behind closed doors and really perfect everything until they've got all of the knobs and whistles that it needs, then they'll put it out into market. But in that time, several competitors have come into market while they've not been looking. There's a piece around making links. So of all the information that you're gathering together, you're being hungry, you're looking at everything, you're speaking to lots of consumers. Make those links and push them together and see what happens. Be aware of field culture. So again, we heard about it in the previous presentation. Be aware of what's going on around the world and how that's feeding through. There's a lot happening with immigration at the moment, and those people, as they move around, are taking their food cultures with them. Those are the next things that we need to be tapping into. And then there's a piece around design thinking as well. Design thinking is really thinking about the whole experience, every touch point that your consumer will have with the product, and that's on your product and your pack. It's not necessarily design. And as a few people have said, it's not putting lipstick on a pig. It's checking, is that pig the right pig? Should it be a pig anyway? It's really stepping back and saying, what does this need to be, and not just prettying up what you've got. To do all that, I think there's a real importance on a creative workplace. So what are the things you can do? All the things in that list. So embrace uncertainty, be at one with what that can bring. Execute bold ideas, so be really brave about it. Lead your team with a strong point of view, but also get your team to share their points of view as well. There are so many times I've worked on projects that my gut feel has said, oh, I know it's big and everyone's excited, but I don't think it's quite right. And then you work on it for a couple of years, it goes out to market and it wasn't quite right. Do what you can to get people to share that. Empower others to navigate ambiguity as well. Not everybody can do it, so find the ways to help them. And use Post-its. There is an interesting stat that the Post-it company have, which says more creative teams use more Post-its. So if you want to drive creativity, Post-its are the way forward. I don't think it was an advert to sell more Post-its, but you never know. So be open, work with the best. I haven't talked about the business that I work for. I work for Twinings currently. They have a really good technical expert panel of external people that they link into. So they don't necessarily have the expertise within the business, but they know who to go out to. They experiment every day, that's important. And finding a way to inspire your business, you have to have the business behind you. Really quickly, I've only got a few minutes left. I wanted to bring it to life in a kind of technical way as well. So I sit in a world that spans marketing and technical. So a lot of that is kind of marketing stuff. How do we bring it through to technical? So do you have a creative culture to support the design thinking process within a technical part of the business? It's more difficult in technical. We tend to be a different breed of people. Is the team and business feeling energised? If you have a pocket of people being energised, but the rest of the business isn't, you're going to find difficulty. Is the concept right? So does it target today's or tomorrow's consumer? Does it do a job? I'd ask you to challenge those things as your marketing teams would typically bring you a concept. Really ask those questions. And then when you get into what you do, really champion the consumer and their journey. So do you know when they'll use the product, what the true need is? How do you play that through to the product attributes? So I'm talking here about a vegetable cracker concept, and I've put an asterisk saying almost. I can't share with you exact details of things that I've worked on due to confidentiality. But something in this area, I had to ask questions like, how thick does the product need to be? What flavour does it need to be? The key ingredients, nutrition, the structure of the pack. usage instructions, what's the price going to be, all of those things you really need to dig into with your consumers. Can it be prototyped and iterated? So prototyping will bring things to life and will help you find the things that could cause issues even sooner than if you wait. And it aids kind of storytelling within the business as well. So if you have something that you need to sell to senior stakeholders, make some prototypes and really bring it to life and put it into their hands. Can it be made to hit the right cogs is a really big question for me. So you might find that you've got an amazing concept and you find out all the attributes you want, and then you get to implementation and actually you've got to compromise for operations. We can't make it on our kit, so we're going to do this to it, and you come out with the pig that you originally had and don't want. You need to compromise for a COGS target, or you need to compromise for a route to market. All of those compromises are the things that will make your product sit on shelf and not actually solve that need that you've discovered. Are senior leaders bought in? Do you have the right launch plan to fit your target? And do you have an authentic story and experience? So we've talked about that being really important. How do you move it through? So in summary, you may have a winning concept. Question yourself really hard. Is it relevant? And do you know what to do with it? Thank you.